The oldest vehicle manufacturer in American history did not die because it built bad cars. It died because it could not build cars cheaply enough. And it could not build them cheaply enough because it had been building vehicles longer than any of its competitors, and longer meant more overhead, more labor agreements, more institutional weight than any single product line could support. In 1953, it cost Studebaker $265 more to build a car than it cost Chevrolet to build a comparable one. Studebaker had not made a single engineering mistake. It had made a structural one, 100 years in the making. The Studebaker brothers started with $68 and a blacksmith shop in 1852. They built the largest wagon company in the world. Then they built cars. Then the cars built a cost structure that nothing could survive. Not talent, not design, not a century of brand loyalty. The wagon had become a car. The car had become a problem. And the problem, by the time it was visible, was already 100 years old. Clement and Henry Studebaker arrived in South Bend, Indiana in 1852 with $68 between them and a specific division of function that would define the company for the next half-century. Henry built, Clement sold. The arrangement was clean, productive, and immediately profitable because South Bend in 1852 needed wagons the way it needed water, and the Studebakers built wagons that did not fail. 3 more brothers followed, John, Peter, and Jacob. By 1868, all 5 were inside the operation, each carrying a distinct function, none duplicating the others. The company grew not through acquisition or financial engineering, but through the compounding of competence, each product built to a standard that the previous one had established, each contract fulfilling a promise the previous contract had made. The Civil War changed the scale. The Studebaker factory floor, South Bend, Indiana, winter, 1863. The space smells of fresh timber, iron filings, and animal hide, the specific combination of materials that a vehicle built for hard use in difficult conditions requires. Henry walks the line of completed wagons for the Union Army contract, checking wheel alignment by eye, pressing his thumb against the joint between each wheel hub and its axle housing, feeling for the gap that indicates a fit that will fail. The Army has ordered 100 units delivered to a railhead in Ohio within 60 days. Each wagon weighs 1,200 pounds empty. Henry has never missed a delivery deadline. On a farm road, the gap he is checking for would not matter. On a campaign road in winter mud, carrying ammunition and supplies for men whose lives depend on the wagon not stopping, it would matter completely. He does not find the gap. He moves to the next wagon. The contract delivered on time. Then the next contract. Then the frontier opened, and Studebaker wagons moved settlers westward, supplied army posts, and carried freight across territories with no rail connection. The brand meant one thing in every territory it reached. The wagon comes back, not fast, not cheap, back. By 1875, Studebaker was the largest wagon manufacturer in the world. By 1895, it was still the largest vehicle manufacturer in the world. And the automobile had already been invented. Studebaker did not ignore the automobile. It studied it, produced electric experiments in 1897, and entered a gasoline automobile partnership with the Garford Company in 1902. Not a clean break, a parallel operation. Wagons continuing, automobiles beginning, both sharing the infrastructure that 50 years of wagon manufacturing had built. The overhead of both accumulated simultaneously. Neither fully subsidized the other. The wagon had become a car. The car had become a problem. In 1902, neither of those statements was yet true. The problem was still invisible, buried inside half a century of infrastructure that nobody had yet been asked to justify. In 1911, Studebaker dissolved its automobile partnerships and incorporated as a pure car manufacturer. The wagon business was wound down. The decision was correct strategically. The future was combustion, not harness. Yet, it was structurally catastrophic in a way that would not become fully visible for 40 years. The automobile company now carried the complete overhead of a manufacturing operation built for a different product at a different scale. The labor agreements negotiated for wagon production did not renegotiate themselves for automobile production. The facilities built for wagon assembly did not resize themselves for automobile assembly lines. The management layers added across 50 years of growth did not dissolve because the product had changed. The overhead remained. The product changed around it. Through the 1920s, Studebaker built a credible middle market position. Not as cheap as Ford, not as expensive as Cadillac, respected in the space where most American car buyers lived. Profitable, growing, apparently stable. Then the Depression arrived in 1929, and the stability revealed itself as thinner than it had appeared. Studebaker went into receivership in 1933. Paul Hoffman and Harold Vance restructured the debt and returned the company to profitability by 1935. The recovery was real. Yet the restructuring addressed the liability, not the architecture beneath it. The cost structure that had produced the receivership remained intact, adjusted, managed, deferred, but not resolved. The company that emerged from receivership in 1935 was financially solvent and structurally unchanged. In 1947, Raymond Loewy's design studio delivered the post-war Studebaker, the first genuinely new American automobile design after World War II. The body was so symmetrical that automotive critics called it the coming or going car, unable to determine from a distance which end was the front. Industrial designers studied it. International press covered it. For one brief specific moment, Studebaker was the most discussed car company in America. The South Bend Factory Management Office, 1953. A glass-walled room overlooking the assembly line, production noise entering through a single-pane window. The production supervisor sets a Chevrolet cost comparison sheet beside his own on the desk, an industry report, publicly available, impossible to dispute. His finger moves down the per-unit cost column and stops at the gap, $265, not per year, per car, every car. The Loewy design had been admired worldwide, and it had sold well, and it had changed nothing about the number on this sheet. Because the number was not a design problem, it was not an engineering problem, it was the accumulated weight of every labor contract, every facility overhead, every management layer that had been attached to this operation since before the automobile existed. He will send the sheet to the board. The board will commission a study. The study will confirm what the sheet already shows. The number will not change. The wagon had become a car. The car had become a problem. In 1953, the problem finally had a number, $265 per unit, every unit, with no structural mechanism to close the gap. The Big Three had returned to full post-war production capacity by 1950. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler were building cars faster and cheaper than Studebaker could match, not because Studebaker's engineers were inferior, but because GM and Ford and Chrysler had started as car companies. Their overhead was built for car production. Studebaker's overhead had been built for wagons and then converted imperfectly, expensively, permanently to cars. The market would not pay $265 for the difference. It had never been asked to. It would not start now. Every strategic response Studebaker mounted from 1953 forward addressed the symptom. None of them reached the cause. The cause was 101 years old and could not be addressed by any action available to a car company operating in a competitive market with a shrinking balance sheet. In 1954, Studebaker merged with Packard, two struggling mid-market manufacturers combining overhead in the hope that shared costs would reduce per-unit expense. The logic was sound. The execution collapsed because Packard's cost problems compounded Studebaker's rather than offsetting them. By 1956, Packard production had ended. One weaker company had been produced from two struggling ones. Sherwood Egbert arrived as president in 1961 with a specific mandate: find the product that reverses the decline. He commissioned Raymond Loewy, the same designer whose 1947 body had briefly made Studebaker the most discussed car company in America, to design a flagship. The instruction was direct: Build something the market cannot ignore. Lowy delivered the Avanti, a fiberglass-bodied sports car with a supercharged V8, a roofline so distinctive it entered the Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection before it reached dealer showrooms. Independent testing put it faster than a Corvette. A single Bonneville salt flat session produced 29 land speed records. The automotive press covered it as a genuine achievement, not a struggling company's desperate play, but a machine that deserved its results. The dealers could not get enough units. The South Bend plant could not produce them fast enough at the cost the pricing required. The best product Studebaker had ever built was accelerating the closure it had been commissioned to prevent, because every Avanti that shipped cost more to produce than the market would pay to own, and producing them faster required resources the cost structure could not supply. The Avanti was faster than a Corvette, admired by the Museum of Modern Art, and setting land speed records at Bonneville. It was also bankrupting the company that built it, because every unit Studebaker shipped cost more to make than the market would pay to own. The South Bend assembly line, December 1963. A production floor that has been building vehicles continuously since 1852, now running its last shift. The line supervisor walks the floor in the sequence he has followed every shift for 22 years. The same stations, the same tolerances, the same hands. The cars moving through assembly are not defective. They are not inferior to anything Detroit is producing. They pass every inspection. They cost too much to build. And that is the entire problem, and it has never been a problem on this floor. It was never a problem that this floor could solve. The last car off the line is a 1964 Studebaker Cruiser. It is completed, inspected, and driven clear. 7,000 workers will not return on Monday. The assembly line that produced it has been running in one form or another since before the Civil War. Production moved to Hamilton, Ontario in January 1964. 800 workers against South Bend's 7,000. 4 body styles against a full model range. A Canadian facility serving a distribution network built for a national American operation, the mismatch between the production base and the sales infrastructure was immediate and unresolvable. Dealers lost confidence. Orders slowed. The arithmetic that had closed South Bend did not stop at the border. Studebaker did not close because it ran out of ideas. It closed because it ran out of margin, and the margin had been running out since before the automobile existed. The Hamilton plant, March 16, 1966. A smaller space than South Bend, quieter. 800 workers moving through a production sequence reduced to its minimum viable form. The last car, a 1966 Cruiser, the same model that had closed South Bend, reaches the end of the line. The worker at the final inspection station checks the panel gaps, the door alignment, the trim fitment. The car passes. He marks it complete. He looks down the line behind the car. The line is empty in a way it has not been empty during a shift since he started here, not the empty of a break or a changeover, but the permanent empty of a sequence that is finished. He does not know yet that there will not be a next car. The company has not announced it. The line has simply stopped, and the stop feels different from every stop before it. He folds his inspection sheet and puts it in his shirt pocket. The 1966 Cruiser weighs 3,300 pounds. The first Studebaker wagon Henry inspected for the Union Army in 1863 weighed 1,200 pounds empty. The company that built both of them started with $68 and lasted 114 years. He will find out what the stop means on Monday. The wagon had become a car. The car had become a problem. The problem had been running since 1852. Through the Civil War contracts, through the frontier economy, through the Depression receivership, through the Lowy designs and the Avanti and the $265 cost gap and the South Bend closure and the 2 Hamilton years. It had run longer than most American companies exist. On March 16, 1966, it finally ran out. The wagon had become a car. The car had become a problem.